What's up, guys? This is Paul. This is actually part two. The first part was just a video demonstration of the Arduino clock functioning in its state. This one here, I'm just going to go over some of the code here that I put together to help solve some of the issues I was looking at. But this clock here actually requires, looks like 1, 2, 3 libraries. So you have the wire library, right? And then you have the RTC library and the liquid crystal I2C library here. And it's pretty standard and straightforward. If you read through the documentation on the libraries, they tell you how to initialize it and how to start certain things. In my case, this one gave me an issue here, so I had to actually spell it out. From my readings, others have had luck doing it this way by just denoting the address. And if you have a 16 character by 2 row, you could just do this and it'll work. However, I tried it and it didn't work for me, so I had to actually spell it out, and by doing it this way it worked for me, so I left it the way it is. These are just the basics, which pinout is what, and here's a little the pinouts. At least it tells you what the pinout is. For example, this is the address here in hex, and that's what it's saying here. Put in the address, right? And then you have these other pins with the rewrite and such, and then of course the data lines. And so you just put all these in, and by default, this is a standard setup here. So you can just pop this in, and it'll work for you. And so that was one of the issues that I ran into with the I2C. But getting this set up correctly, like shown here, it actually works. But there are some basics here, like serial.begin. This is only if you're using serial for output, and I have that here just so that I know that it's functioning. So I have that here. But if you're not using serial output to view and you're just using it straight on the LCD, you will probably want to comment this out along with these lines here, because this is all based on the serial, so that it will give you feedback. And the feedback is shown here at this time. But I have it there just so I can see it. Of course, in the setup, you also have the wire and then also the RTC. You want to set these up. One thing I do want to note that threw me off was this here. This actually works for me, although some folks complain that it doesn't work. For me, it worked. But the problem is that if you don't take it off after burning it or program to the chip, then every time it resets, or when you pull out the plug and plug it back in, it'll restart from this time that was initially entered in. So what I have to do is I have to take off the comment, run it like this. It'll load the time, put it really fast in, run it again, program the Arduino again, and then it'll start working from there, so long as I have the battery, the 3-volt battery working on that small little clock unit. Then it'll hold the time and keep the time for me. But I had to do that, take it off just so that it'll work properly with this. These lines here basically pertain to the LCD here. You probably don't need this here, but I just put it there. Just kind of like a splash screen, just to give me an insight of what's going on. This is the client's version 1, and then my website here. But that's all it's doing. You don't really need it if you don't need it there. And delay, same thing. You don't need that if you don't need it. If you're not going to set anything for the LCD initially, then you probably don't need this one too. But this one you need. So that's all that is. Next here in the loop, we have a daytime now for the RTC. Again, serial print. If you're not using serial, which is this here, if you're not viewing the output, then you really don't need that there. I just kept it there so that I can use it and so that I can look at it visually to make sure it's working. Day and time, I have that actually over on this tab here, and that calls all this function here. And then delay, and now you don't really need delay in theory. I don't need it, but I only have it here just so that this right doesn't go haywire and start listing thousands of record or lines every second. So I put that delay there just so that it'll make sense over here when I'm looking at this time here. But the day and times where the bulk of it takes place, um, essentially everything's all defined out for you already. So, and it's pretty self-explanatory. So the function or the reason why I have it over here in breakout is just so that I can see it better. And it's also to function as, well, I'm using this to convert it over to a 12-hour format, and that's why I have it separate over here so that I can easily see it. But really, essentially, if you don't want it in the 12-hour format, you can really just say, you know, if you go through and just put month, now dot month, now dot day, and now dot year, that's pretty much your date there. And then for time, you could just do the same thing, now dot hour, now dot minutes, now dot seconds. But then that's going to give you that military time, and I'm not used to that, so I'd prefer the 12-hour format. And so I had to go through this whole bit of putting in some if statement, else if statement, just so that I can get it to say, 12 o'clock, and I can get to cycle every 12 o'clock, or every 12 hours, I'm sorry. And so I had to kind of work with them, massage the numbers a little bit, move things around, add in leading zeros for single digits, because I was having issues of character shifting in the LCD. So I had to put in some if statements in here just so that when the number shifts, when it tries to shift, there'll be a zero there in spot, and it won't shift. So if you look at this here, once it resets to 0, it's going to start shifting. It's going to use the tens place, and it's going to start counting from the 10. So that creates an issue when I'm having AM or PM at the side here. It starts shifting over, or when I set it by default to display at this character, at this column, this is going to be, or this number is going to be cached in. So when it resets, the last number it sees here is a 9. The 9 is going to stick around until it counts all the way down to 10 before it resets again. So I had to put these conditions in here to print certain zeros in certain places based on, based on what hour it is. But that's what this is here in a nutshell. It's very basic, very simple. What I plan to do next is actually add in a couple buttons so that I can actually program it using the buttons instead of having to manually input this in. And then the other thing, I'm probably going to add in some other functions and features to read in other sensors and other inputs, because that's essentially the idea of it. It wasn't just for a clock, but it's to build upon another project. So that is pretty much it in a nutshell. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. If you like this video, subscribe. And if you can, check out my website for more tutorials, paulsvang.com. Thanks, guys.